Good evening and a very warm welcome. This is Neelam Seolika from Aisas Women Pune, and welcome to another session of Ek Mulakat Vishesh, an initiative by Prabha Khaitan Foundation presented by Sri Cement Limited. Prabha Khaitan Foundation is a foundation based in Kolkata, founded by late Dr. Prabha Khaitan. The foundation is dedicated to promoting performing arts, culture, education, literature, gender equality, and empowerment, women's empowerment. It collaborates with caregivers, committed individuals, and like-minded institutions to implement cultural, educational, literary, and social welfare projects in India. The guest for today's session is Mr. Manish Tewari. Manish Tewari is a lawyer and member of parliament from Sri Anandpur Sahib in Ludhiana, Punjab. He served as Minister of State Independent Charge in the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, Government of India. He's the senior spokesperson of the Indian National Congress from 2008 onwards and was also General Secretary of its Foreign Affairs Department. Mr. Tewari has authored 3 books: Decoding a Decade, The Politics of Policy Making, Fables of Fractured Times, and Tiding of Troubled Times. In the conversation with him today is Ms. Archana Dalmia, politician, columnist, and Assas woman of Delhi. Now, I would request the audience to sit back and relax and enjoy the conversation. Over to you, Archana.
A very warm welcome to you, Manish. I can't see.
Yeah, thank you very much. I can see you loud and clear.
All right. Very warm welcome to you, Manish. Thank you for taking out time to be with us. You have introduced yourself on your Twitter handle as MP, former INB Minister, Senior National Spokesperson of the Congress. This defines the politician Manish Tewari. If I was to ask you to add a few words that would sum up the person beneath the politician, what would it be?
Well, Archana, you've actually started with a very tough one. And so therefore, it would require me a few moments to possibly rack my brains to try and get below the veneer of my own public profile. Well, if I was to characterize it on one word, I would say daydreamer. I love daydreaming.
Wow. Okay, talking about words and tags, you have famously said, the tag of a conscientious dissenter works for me. Now, does that apply to you in the political arena alone, or does that define you in other spheres as well?
Well, there was a certain context to that question and or to that answer. And the context to that answer, Archana, was that we had written a letter to the Congress president seeking her attention with regard to certain things which we thought are very imperative given the larger framework of what has been happening in this country since 2014. Now, when that letter became public, and not because of our doing, and I do not want to get into the politics of that, obviously it created a lot of media interest, and some of our colleagues got rather antsy about the whole thing. And so we were given all kinds of names, all kinds of expletives were used, traitors, Mir Jafars, and every other synonym for that particular terminology. And so therefore, when the Hindustan Times interviewed me, they asked me that, well, your colleagues are calling you a traitor, they're calling you Mir Jafar, they're calling you all sorts of names. So it was in response to that I said that the tag of a consensuous dissenter works for me. Unfortunately, as it is in the newspaper business, there is always shortage of space because news is competing with advertisements because the former brings in the readers while the latter brings in the revenue, or maybe vice versa. And so, therefore, the question got cut out, and only the answer remained in the newspaper. I guess they had to sort of fit into their word limit. And so that's the backstory of the consensuous dissenter. But yes, I am fairly critical and even self-critical because I think that any person who even has a modicum of thinking capacity, if he or she does not analyze him or herself in a fairly objective, unbiased, and in non-partisan manner, you don't really do justice to yourself.
So it's in other spheres also besides politics.
Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely, yes. Oh, absolutely, yes. This very brutal self-appraisal and appraisal, I think, extends across the entire spectrum of activity which I do, professional and public. And especially, if you are a lawyer, you need to have the ability to be very brutal with regard to the facts because here in a court of law, you're not beating about the bush. At times, your client's life hangs on your ability to be able to put things in a correct perspective. And if you indulge yourself in self-delusion, not only do you do yourself great disservice, but you also do your profession a great disservice.
Well, actually, Manish, law is a very gray subject. You can twist it anyway. It's got a lot of space for maneuver.
Well, I entirely agree with you. I remember when I finished high school, class 10th. So my grandfather was a barrister. He was also a freedom fighter. He was our first chief minister of the state of Pepsu. That's the Patiala and the East Punjab States Union. When we became independent, Punjab was actually two different states. There was the British Punjab, which was partitioned, and 10 million people died in 2 months between Rawalpindi and New Delhi. And then there was the there were the princely states, which were all bunched together. And a new state was formed called the Patiala and the East Punjab States Union, Pepsu. So he was the first chief minister of the state of Pepsu. And a very kindred soul who had done a lot of jail time in the struggle against the princely states. And let me tell you, the princely states were far, far more brutal than the British when it came to dealing with people who were fighting for their rights. So I was at his place and he came home from court in the afternoon. So I told him, I said, I've just finished my class 10th exams. So he says, let me take you for a glass of beer. So he took me to the club for a glass of beer. And he sat me down and he asked me, he says, what do you want to do in life? So I said, I want to be a lawyer. So he says, remember one thing. In courts, there is no justice. There are only decisions. In Punjabi, he told me, he says, Adaltan ch faisle hunde ne, insaf nahi. And it has stuck with me ever since. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the more I grow older, the more that maxim rings true. So you're correct. It's I wouldn't repeat the phrase 50 shades of grey because last time I did so in Parliament, it led to a fair amount of brutal trolling from people who didn't understand the context. But yes, it is a lot of grey.
Manish, you were INB minister during the last government when the Congress was in power. So today, if you were to become the INB minister, what were the changes that you'd like to implement?
Abolish the INB ministry. I have written very extensively about it because I had the time to think from 2014 to 2019. Since I chose not to contest in 2014, of course, a lot of people criticized me for that, saying that you ran away from the battle. But then again, as they say, there are two sides to a story. But we'll not go into that at this point in time. The fact remains, it gave me a lot of time to think. And one of the conclusions that I came to is this country doesn't require a minister for information and broadcasting or a ministry of information and broadcasting. These are extremely ossified structures of a bygone era, a socialist era or a communist era, which has been buried in the sands of time. What this country requires is something like a Federal Communications Commission, an impartial regulator of both content and the business end of the entire media spectrum. So this can turn out to be a very longish debate. But in a sense, I do believe, and I am of this firm view, that, like, for example, this country does not require a central board of film certification, what is called the censor board. And unfortunately, what's happening is in the reverse, because the government has just...
Yeah, my following questions were on that only. I was going to ask you now, with OTT platforms beaming uncontrolled content directly into our homes 24/7, what is your view on censorship? Because censorship and all comes within the INB ministry. So there has to be, modulation or a correction there where this could be controlled.
Well, the template is already available in the Cable Television Networks Regulation Act, so which regulates the broadcasting space, the television space. So you have a program code and you have an advertising code. Now, all television channels are supposed to adhere to that advertising and program code. Now, for example, if there are violations to that, there is an interministerial committee which looks into it. And of course, if there is a grave licensing violation, then the ministry has the sovereign right to cancel the license. So there's no pre-censorship of content. And television...
No, but then that comes under the INB ministry, am I right?
Well, in the sense, that's what I'm saying. This has to be taken out. So I'm trying to make fundamentally 2 points. Unlike cinema, where every film goes through a certification or a censor process, television is uncensored. So therefore, whatever action gets taken is post facto. So you had the Mukul Mudgil committee, which was appointed by me, Justice Mukul Mudgil, who was Chief Justice of the Punjab and Haryana High Court. Subsequently, you had a committee under this very eminent filmmaker appointed by Mr. Arun Jaitley. The name is slipping my mind. I'm having a senior's moment. So, but both these committees essentially said that it should be a self-regulatory mechanism, which should be complemented with very heavy penalties in case if you violate those guidelines. So rather than a pre-censorship or a censorship paradigm or format. And I think that is what should be there across the board. So you have certain broad guidelines which all content providers, whether it is print, it's broadcasting, it is OTT platforms, all need to adhere to. And in case they are found in violation of those guidelines, which they have self-certified that they are in full compliance with, then it should entail some, very heavy penalties, which would act as a deterrent. So it would open up the entire creative space, whereby you will allow a million flowers to bloom. But at the same time, you would be able to, with the with the threat of deterrence or punitive action, ensure that people do not cross a line.
I feel that with this uncontrolled content, which is coming into our bedrooms 24/7, there's a direct link in the spurt of crime against women and in general, because of this uncensored content. Don't you feel the same?
Well, honestly, it's a little more complicated than that. For example, even let's suppose you were to, let's say, walk the extra mile on censorship. Let us suppose if you were to become an Orwellian state like China and firewall the internet completely, make it into an intranet, you employ maybe 1 million people who troll the net, looking for politically and let us say even socially sensitive content, but still you will never ever be able to mitigate it, let alone eradicate it. So therefore, respect for women, I think, is a part of a larger consciousness which we as a country need to internalize and imbibe. And that's something which is an ethic which really needs to start from the day you were born, or at least the day you start going to school. I do not think that censorship of content is the answer to that. And then let us suppose, even if you were to proscribe the internet, there is something called the dark net. And there is everything which is happening on the dark net. You've got drugs,
Exactly.
pornography, you've got live murders being, I mean, that's what people tell me, or that's what I've read. So therefore, what you are seeing, which Google pops up for you, or a search engine pops up for you, is really the flora and fauna of the internet, the subterranean underbelly of the internet, which is very easy to access with a onion search engine, is a whole different ball game altogether. So I have these famous 4 or 5 lines about the internet, which I keep repeating ad nauseum, that the internet really represents the largest ungoverned space on planet Earth.
Yeah,
So,
true.
so it's a virtual civilization which has been created, and the future of humankind actually lies at the intersection of a physical brick and mortar civilization which evolved over the millennia and a virtual civilization which is currently evolving. And as we go forth, you may even have countries which exist only in the virtual space.
Yeah.
So therefore, sovereignty as a concept would become completely passe. You would have currencies. I mean, you have this whole debate on cryptocurrencies currently taking place. Countries do not know how to deal with it. So that's a completely different dimension of a virtual civilization, which you've not really come to grips with, much less understand.
Are you on FB and Insta? I follow you on Twitter, so I know about that. And how much time do you spend on social media?
Well, if you would see, most of my posts on social media are fairly anodyne. It's either about the work which I think I do, or it is about critiquing other people for the work which I think they do not do. So therefore, I and many others like me use social media in a very unsocial manner. In fact, social media was an excellent mechanism which was created by some really good souls to connect the world. The Facebooks, the Instagram.
It should become anti-social media now, because they are more trolling than
yeah, but unfortunately, it's been taken over by organized groups, political parties, the state, non-state actors, every other kind of negative manifestation which is available on planet Earth. And so therefore, what was supposed to be the democratization of the discourse has really become the demonization of the discourse. And the greatest paradox is, as instruments of information dissemination have proliferated, our tolerance levels have correspondingly come down. Our ability to be able to hear an alternative point of view has virtually become non-existent, and the most obvious manifestation of that is this whole phenomena of trolling and abuse, which is there in the virtual space.
Coming back to women and the safety of women, you had said at one time that no parent feels safe if a daughter is out late in any part of India, especially in the metro cities. You have also said that this cannot be allowed to go on, and it is our responsibility as a society. How can we as a society make India safe for our daughters?
Well, I stand by that view as the father of a daughter who's now grown up. I've spent many, many nights awake when these kids used to go out partying. And I used to be really, really concerned to the point of driving them insane. Checking up after, let's say, if they were late, post 1 o'clock. Because honestly, our cities are not safe for our children, especially our women. And as I say, that goes back to the whole mindset issue. A single woman walking alone at night on the streets, let's leave alone an odd city here or there, is really in danger. And this should not be the case. I mean, it's not that as if Western cities are completely immune from this malaise. But yes, there are certain societies which have been able to create conditions whereby safety of women may be an issue, but it's not the kind of problem that we have in India even now. Look, we tightened the Nirbhaya laws, right, when we were in government. The UPA government, as a reaction to that very horrific gang rape which had taken place in Delhi, tightened the laws. We enacted the POSCO Act, but has it really mitigated crimes against women? The answer is no. And that's why I keep going back to the fact that till the time you do not have a bottoms-up social change in terms of attitudes, law alone or even very punitive law cannot deal with this problem.
In addition to this question, I just want to ask you, would you tell your daughter, would you give her a dress code that don't dress like this and dress like that when you go out?
Well, that's a tough one. And that's a very tough one. You try telling your kids, to dress in a particular way or not to dress in a particular way. It militates against, the entire ethos of what you've brought them up with, which is that you have freedom of choice. But yes, it does worry you, and I would be less than truthful if I would not tell you that at times I've told my daughter that, Vita, I don't think this would work at night.
Manish, I read the most heartwarming post on Insta on Daughter's Day, in which you said to a father, which you had said, to a father growing old, nothing is dearer than a daughter. What would your message be to every daughter today?
Well, I think I should actually reverse the charge. My message shouldn't be to young women, who are ready to fly. My message should be actually to old parents that we should just let them fly.
Okay. Dare I say that you're one of the fittest MPs today? Please share with our viewers, what is your mantra for fitness?
I'm sorry, I wish that was true. I mean, in the sense, there are many, many of my colleagues who are much, much fitter than I. And I would love to be, as fit as I was, maybe in a different lifetime, many eons back. But yeah, where I try to sort of, do a 5 kilometer walk run in the morning. I used to run 5 kilometers till the time my knee started acting up. And well, I do a bit of free hand exercises, some dumbbells, try and find 1 hour for yourself. But I guess the trick is in being regular. So therefore, the one thing which I did try and maintain, whichever part of the world I was in, even if we were traveling relentlessly, as all of us were before the pandemic, was to find 1 hour to spend on yourself. And I think you owe it to the machine that you take work out of 16, 17 hours a day.
Okay, Manish, at 55, what is the one regret about the past that bothers you? And what is the one challenge about the future that drives you?
Well, you can't quantify regrets as to whether what was that one great regret that you have, because there are a number of situations at different points in time in your life. When you think back with the wisdom of hindsight, when you kind of put on your 6x6 cap, you do think that you could have done things differently. For example, the latest one of my recent regrets has been that I should have fought the 2014 Parliament elections, whatever my health situation was. It remained an enduring regret with me. In fact, it is what drove me to fight the 2019 elections, because I didn't want to live with the tag of, somebody who ran away from the battlefield. But as you look ahead, I think the only one thing which I keep saying to myself is that the real challenge is to grow old as disease-free as possible.
I think a lot of us would feel the same. What is your ultimate ambition?
Well, my ultimate ambition is to write the book, the book which becomes a template for times to come. So therefore, there are no material ambitions left. There are really no overarching political aspirations left. But yes, there is that yearning to write the book which would be remembered for times to come. So therefore, I haven't really applied myself to the subject which should really trigger that possible endeavor. But yes, that is the one thing that...
Can we rephrase that question into what does success mean to you?
Well, success to me means, living a life where you're comfortable with yourself, where you can go to sleep at night with a clear conscience that whatever you've done keeping the best public interest in mind. I think that's what success means, that in your head, in your mind, you know that you're doing the right thing. And as long as that remains your beacon, that remains your pole star or your guiding compass, I guess you're fairly successful. It's just a state of mind.
Yep. Where do you see the Congress in the 2024 elections?
Look, Archana, the country is in difficulty. We are in more difficulty than we can even imagine. And I'm not saying this as a congressman. I have a rural constituency which goes across 4 districts of Punjab. We have 1,800 villages. Right? As someone who was brought up in a very urban setting. This constituency, unlike my previous one, Ludhiana, has been a great learning experience in terms of the real challenges which are agrarian communities, which are still 65% of the population face. The average land holding in my constituency is between 1 to 2 acres. We don't measure land here in acres, we measure it in khates. How many, how many pieces of land that you have. And for them, it's a daily struggle to keep their body and soul together. If India has to do justice to the 135 crore people who populate this land and who call themselves Indians, we require at least 30 years of peace on our periphery for internal consolidation to surmount the challenges of human development, whereby we can give our people the dignity of life, whereby we can give our people children's schools, whereby we can give our people hospitals, whereby we can give them the basics of what is called a dignified
Manish,
living.
you haven't answered my question. My question is, where do you see the Congress in the 2024 elections?
Well, Archana, I was trying to answer that question, that today, given the trajectory that we are on, the issue is no longer the Congress. The issue is, how do you really rescue this country from the morass that it has gone into? And therefore, the next 3 years are going to be extremely challenging for both the Congress party, which will have to figure out a way of living with other opposition parties if we are to ensure that 2024 does not give us what we got in 2019 or 2014.
My question still remains unanswered, but anyway, we'll pass. Your comments?
No. Let me. Your question does not remain unanswered because if you were asking a black and white binary, I don't think 2024 is going to be about the Congress party alone. The Congress party has to walk in lockstep with the other opposition forces in this country if the founding vision of India, the idea of India which was conceived in the crucible of the Constituent Assembly debates, is still to remain alive. So therefore, the question about where do I see the Congress in 2024 is but a little subset of where do I see this country in 2024.
It is. Your comments on the Congress being headed by Rahul Gandhi?
Well, the Congress party unanimously chose Mr. Rahul Gandhi as the president in 2017 December. And it was a smooth transition from Mrs. Gandhi, who had headed the party since 1998 for 19 long years after that. In 2019, when we lost the elections, Mr. Rahul Gandhi decided to step down, which is a very, very rare thing that any politician in this country ever does, which is to take responsibility and say that if it happened on my watch, I am prepared to take it on the chin. And he essentially did. And so therefore, as we stand today, the Congress is headed into an election for its presidency because Mrs. Gandhi was an interim president. And I don't think it'll be appropriate to put the cart before the horse. Let us see what that electoral process throws up.
Okay, let's move on and infuse some action into this. Are you ready for a round of rapid fire?
Yeah, go right ahead.
I can't start my day without.
Yeah, my cup of tea.
A defining moment of your life.
The defining moment of my life was when I jumped for the first time from a 10-meter high board into a swimming pool, which didn't look bigger than an orange.
Assuming that you're also hooked on to the OTT shows and films, which one have you really loved?
The House of Cards.
Your favorite food?
Sorry?
Your favorite food? Food.
My favorite food is the forbidden apple.
Are you going to define what that is?
Well,
Okay.
I'll leave that to conjecture and imagination.
One superpower that you would like to have?
Sorry?
One superpower that you'd like to have?
One superpower that I'd like to have. Well, I've really never given that a thought, and so therefore, and off the bat will not be the correct response. What kind of superpower would a human being desire? It's an interesting thought. If we ever come back to a question and answer again, I would definitely apply my mind to it.
If you ask me, I'd say, give me a magic wand, I'll remove poverty. That's, it just came off the...
If wishes were horses, then wise men could ride them.
That's exactly, I was giving you a house to ride on. Your favorite courtroom drama in a show, film, as a lawyer?
My favorite courtroom drama, well, there are a number of these where John Grisham has written, which have been now turned into movies. Each one of them is as good as the other one, but The Good Wife is nice.
One word to describe primetime news debates on TV.
WWF. It is the WWF of television.
Okay. What are you proud of?
What am I proud of? Well, I am proud of the fact that I was born and grew up in a country which has space for diversity. And unfortunately, when I see that space for diversity being constricted on a daily basis, that makes me very sad.
What makes Manish Tewari happy?
What makes me happy? My morning run. That's the happiest moment of my life, because especially, at one point in time, I used to swim competitively. And when, let's suppose you do 100 meters freestyle, at about 75 meters, the pain hits you in the stomach. And the last 25 meters, you kind of just do it on willpower. And your mind is completely empty at that point in time. And it's that moment of meditative bliss, which you can only experience if you've been there.
Yep. If not a political leader, what would you be?
If not a political leader, what would I be? Well, I would be a lawyer, which I currently am. I'm fairly happy with the clothes that I wear.
Favorite childhood memory?
Well, there's lots of childhood memories, but the favorite one is actually stealing ice cream from the ice cream vendor.
Wow. If you were a Krishna...
Sorry?
If you were Krishna and Rahul Gandhi was Arjun, what advice would you give him?
Well, one thing that you learn as a lawyer is never to give advice which is either unsolicited or unpaid for.
It's subjective. If you were Krishna and he was Arjun...
Well, I'm telling you that I don't know how much of Krishna's advice I actually really, watched in Arjun. But the one thing that I've learned after being a lawyer for close to 4 decades now, that any advice which you give, which is either unpaid for or unsolicited, go straight into the dustbin.
If you were to meet a genie, what is one wish you would ask for?
If I was to meet a genie, what is the one wish that I would ask for? Well, the one wish I would ask for is to put me on top of Mount Everest.
3 words to describe you.
Happy, jolly, glad.
Happy, jolly,
Glad.
glad. One advice that your daughter gave you that you remember.
Yeah, she said, don't keep shooting your mouth off because it puts me into a lot of stress. I remember, we
I think we've lost network. Hello.
His internet is.
Is it low?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Okay. So
One advice that your daughter
yeah.
gave you.
So we used to do these regular pressers, and in one of those pressers, somebody asked me that, Katrina Kaif has said this, and I turned around and said, "Well, who's Katrina Kaif?" And
Oops.
actually, I didn't know who she was. So I mean, I'm fairly. And you would think as to, why did I become INB minister if I didn't know? But so next day I got yelled at by my daughter, and she told me, she says, if you don't know something, don't put both your feet into your big mouth. So therefore, that's good advice that I followed ever since.
Your favorite dinner guest.
Oh, well, my favorite dinner guest is I, me, myself. That is the time that I want to be all by myself, because those are the thinking moments when you wind up the day. So I am not a very social person in the evenings, and unlike a lot of people who are night owls, I am fairly comfortable being in bed by 9:30 p.m. So my favorite dinner guest is I, me, myself.
Wow. Either you're in love with yourself or you're just.
Well, in the sense, that's the way I am.
Okay. Do you think that it's luck, destiny, or hard work?
It's all three. It's being at the right place at the right time. It's also, working towards it. And then there is an overarching construct that God has a plan. And I firmly do believe that God has a plan. At times it is sinister, at times it is unkind, and at times it can be beautiful and bountiful. For example, if my father wouldn't have got assassinated, I would have been never here doing what I am. I would have possibly, uh, you know, been a manager in some company or been a lawyer or something, but definitely not a politician. And so, therefore, I've always believed that God has a plan, and at times it may not be a very kind plan.
Yeah, it's quite evident from the pandemic that everybody's plans.
It's not a very kind plan, but yes, if you do believe that there is a higher power, then possibly this is a part of some design, which at some point in time, maybe somebody in posterity would be able to figure it out.
Nice. Manish, maybe we can throw the question answer session to the audience.
Please do.
Anandita, Neelam.
Yeah, I can take the questions, and there's a lot of cues that I'm going to take home from you, Manish ji. That's fantastically answered. Let me start with the question by Nilima Adar to you, Manish ji. You've always presented a very serious public demeanor. I like the quintessential angry young man that you are. Can I ask you, Manish Tewari ko gussa kyun aata hai? That's from Nilima Adar.
Well, I think it's just the nature of the medium. Unfortunately, television was so adversarial even back then when I used to do it regularly. And of course, it's become at the absolute pits now, which is why I've stopped doing it. I guess it's just the whole adversarial format of, you know, dog bites dog, which really characterize that format. And so, therefore, uh, I think all of us believed, erroneously so, that maybe we were doing ourselves and whatever we represented a great service by uh, landing the perfect punch on our opponent. And now, when I look back with the advantage of some hindsight, uh, it all just seems so trivial and it all just seems so pointless.
No.
तो गुस्सा नहीं आता है?
Actually, there was never anger, because if there would have been anger, Archana, I would have died of a heart attack every night. Yeah.
No.
so, so, so therefore, there was a lot of play acting. I mean, I wish I could have, done it with a wider smile. And as I said, when I look back, it just kind of looks so pointless. You often feel that why did you waste those 3-4 hours of your life every evening, trying to be an entertainer in somebody else's show.
Okay.
Right. The other one comes from Guru Desh Singh. This was when you were talking about the media and the television. What about undeclared censorships on internet, where many adult channels have been blocked by the telecom ministers?
Well, as I said, this is an open-ended mug's game, which we unfortunately keep playing with ourselves, thinking that we can proscribe the internet. As I was earlier pointing out, that there is the dark net. So therefore, if somebody wants to access pornography, there's nothing which stops him from getting onto an onion browser and just kind of sort of digging in and getting whatever he wants to, whatever perverted taste that he might have. But having said that, you see, the difference between the push medium, which is television, which is what beams into your house 24/7. The others are really pull mediums. Like, for example, you have to go onto a website, you have to go and watch a film. So these are not automatic impulses which get beamed into your homes. This is not to say that you free up the entire space and let pornography reign, because I guess that's not the civilized way of bringing up children or actually having a humane society. But at the end of the day, it's a mug's game. I mean, you would block it on one URL. They would just shift the URL. Today, for example, UAE has blocked WhatsApp for the longest period of time. I mean, you can't make WhatsApp calls from UAE, but people go on to virtual private networks. They just bypass that censorship and do it. So after having created what is called the internet, to think that anybody would be able to proscribe it, much less regulate it, till the time agreed rules of engagement in the virtual civilization don't emerge, is actually a fool's odyssey.
The other one coming to you is from Deepa Mishra. Good evening, Manish ji. It seems that there's a deep connection between law and politics. For example, Bapuji, Panditji, Arun Jaitley, Sushma Swaraj, Salman Khurshid, and Manish Tewari ji. The list is long. All of them practice law and join politics. So many questions is why lawyers are. So my question is why lawyers make good politicians?
Well, I don't know whether lawyers make good politicians, but I do know that lawyers make politicians. And I guess I guess the reason for that is very simple, because you see, law is essentially a study of society, and what lawyers actually see in their daily lives is society at its worst. Because litigation, even if it's civil litigation, is not the most pleasant thing that you experience. And I guess that gives you a perspective and an insight into the human mind, which is very unique and different from what every other profession sees. For example, if you're a doctor, you are healing people, right?
Yeah.
Or let's suppose you're an engineer, you're building stuff. If you are an entrepreneur, you are building companies. And essentially, what do lawyers do is that when people decide to fight, when the stuff actually hits the fan, that's when you go to the lawyers, and you really see some of the worst displays of what we are as human beings right out there. And some of my friends who do divorce litigations, have stories to tell about human behavior, which at times make you wonder that whether we are at all civilized as a species.
Absolutely true. Well, with that, I go to Monica Bhagwa. How would you describe Manish Tewari in totality? Sorry, it's a spell mistake over here. In totality. How would you describe Manish Tewari in totality?
The sum of many parts.
Yeah.
I said I would describe myself in totality as the sum of many parts. So therefore, like every person has different facets to his life,
Yeah.
and does different stuff at different points in time. So therefore, there isn't a totality to a persona. And so therefore, if somebody really wants to sort of sum himself or herself up, I think it takes away from the diversity of who we are as human beings. The sum of many parts, various parts being accentuated and emphasized at different points in time, others being underplayed or being suppressed. And that's what the celebration of human existence, what we call life, is.
True. Very well answered. Yeah. There's another one here from Praneet Babbar. How do you compare the original vision with which you when you joined politics to the reality you have faced for so many years? Any advice for children wanting to get into politics? What you said about swimming is so true. I was a national swimmer as well. That's from Praneet. He wants an advice for children who want to be politicians.
Well, my one-line advice to any young person who wants to enter politics is not to do so till the time they don't have an independent profession of their own. Till the time they are not able to stand on their own 2 feet and earn a living for themselves and their family, independent of politics. That's my one-line advice to every youngster. See, when we came into student politics, it was a very different India. In 1991, after we liberalized, after we globalized, India transformed itself. And the kind of opportunities, the vistas which opened up for young people were really not there for us who grew up in the early and the late 80s. And so therefore, my advice is, take advantage of what is available to you, make a life for yourselves, have an independent standing in society, and then you'll actually be able to value add to India's public life. One of the banes of India's public life is these whole-time politicians.
True. And you have a say as an independent candidate, true. The next one is from Priyanka Goyal. Live life with so many faces as a politician figure. What do you feel at the end of the day?
What do I feel at the end of the day? Well, contrary to what people may think about politicians, there are not too many faces that you're able to put on because people are not fools. And so, therefore, if you try and take them for a ride, they take you for a jolly solid ride at the end of 5 years, right? A ride which you never forget for the rest of your life. So, my policy, my strategy has always been it's better to be straight with the people. You tell them what can be done, what cannot be done, what you can do, what your limitations are. It may hurt for that moment, right? But
Yeah.
ultimately, they understand and they realize that they get what they see.
True. So we've got
Could we end with that because it's 6:50
we've
and
got
it's
two
7.
more. Let me take this interesting one. This is from Harjeet, and it's about he wants some memories of your mother. I think you should answer that one before we. That's from Harjeet Pal. Some
Well-
memories of your mother.
Well, my mother was a very tough woman. And and of course, she was a working woman. She was a doctor. She was the dean and director of the Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research, the sister institution of the All India Institute of Medical Sciences. And after my father's assassination, and she was fairly young then, she must have been in her mid 40s, she brought both of us up single handedly. And never for a moment did I see her indulge herself in self pity. She took what happened to her in her stride. She realized that there was that it's not going to come back, and she just put her nose to the grindstone and put our noses to the grindstone, and that's it. She was a hell of a tough woman. I mean, I respect her for that.
Sure. Wow, that was an amazing unfolding. With this, I think we should come to an end. So I take the opportunity on the behalf of the foundation and would like to thank you, Mr. Manish Tewari and Archana ji. I would also like to thank our presenter, Sri Cement Limited. And last but not the least, I would like to thank our patrons and our audience who have made these sessions so possible. Thank you. Thank you to all, and Jai Hind.
Thank you very much. And it's been a very interesting conversation. And thanks, Archana, for curating it. It's always lovely to talk to you. And please take care of yourself. And please do try and step out of the house. It's not really that unsafe any longer.
I'm loving the period of a lockdown.
Absolutely, in the sense, if you like solitude, if you like space and time to write, the pandemic has, of course, many different ways of many different manifestations. So
It's just a different way of life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
Lovely.
you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.